This is the beginning of a Russian invasion of Ukraine, as he indicated and asked permission to be able to do from his Duma. So let's begin to, I'm going to begin to impose sanctions in response far beyond the steps we and our allies and partners implemented in 2014.
Okay, so that was President Biden responding finally after multiple members of his administration have already responded throughout the day to what happened yesterday vis-a-vis Vladimir Putin, Russia, and Ukraine. So Biden went on to say that Russia's recognition of two separatist republics, in their words, in eastern Ukraine and Donetsk and Luhansk, and the decision to deploy troops there that Vladimir Putin is calling peacekeeping forces, was, quote, carving out a big chunk in Ukraine and setting up a rationale to go much further. So initially, throughout last night, the Biden administration had not yet said that it was an invasion. They hadn't used that terminology. Well, they came out this morning swinging, and by the time you had that press conference with Joe Biden, they had lined up a number of different sanctions that were either already announced or were now going to be rolled out in response to what has happened. We are going to have a little bit more of Biden, as well as details on all of those sanctions, but it has begun. Had it happened by the show yesterday, or is this all post-show?
Well, no. Putin announced in the middle of yesterday's show that he was going to send in peacekeeping forces, and I thought, great, peace has broken out.
Finally.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, I used to fight a lot more. I once punched the guy in the face, and he said, "Thank you." I was wondering when peace was going to arrive.
And he pieced right out. You know, we had a cold peace. I like a nice hot peace, though. I feel like we're moving into a hot peace.
Okay, that was gonna lead in a different direction I'm getting out of. Okay, a piece of, all right. So, in all seriousness, because hey, it could be World War III. I thought about that the other day, by the way, John. I thought, you know, they've got nukes. Did you know that America and Russia combined have 90% of the nuclear weapons of the world? So if this thing continues to escalate, and things don't escalate all at once. You know, they send in peacekeeping forces, we do sanctions, they send in more troops to the rest of Ukraine, we send in weapons and European forces, and then all of a sudden the European forces get killed, and then all of a sudden NATO's in, and all of a sudden we're in, and then we're all dead. Because they wanted to measure, you know, different body parts.
Frozen blanks.
Yeah, and so there's no one innocent here. To the substance of the issue, I don't know why we just didn't say in the beginning, aren't saying now. Fine, Ukraine's not in NATO. It's not hard. I mean, the Biden administration constantly, diplomatic. We're pursuing diplomatic routes. Diplomatic routes isn't just going and talking to them and saying, no, we're not going to move our position 1 inch. Talking to them, the point is to start moving, both of you moving towards a peaceful resolution. But Biden, I don't know if he's doing it for political reasons here at home, wants to seem like a tough guy, which is just the most asinine way of doing it. But he didn't give anything on NATO. And we don't need Ukraine and NATO. The only people who want Ukraine and NATO are neoconservatives who want more war and the defense contractors. Okay, now at the same time, I don't want any BS Russian apologist here or Putin apologist going, well, it might really be peacekeeping forces. I mean, aren't those republics really Russian anyway? And is it a big deal when you take a chunk of another country, another sovereign nation?
Why should we care about that?
And why should we care about Ukraine? What are they, human beings? We're progressives, we don't care.
Yeah, a lot of people very thrilled about it, pretending to not care. A lot of anti-imperialists seemingly very happy today following the breaking out of peace.
Yeah, if you're an anti-imperialist, you should be an anti-imperialist everywhere about every country. You shouldn't be like, oh, I can't believe America's doing imperialism. That should be only for Russia.
I do have a question for you though. I don't disagree about the NATO stuff, but if the idea is that that would then stop Putin from doing this, wouldn't we have to accept that Putin is being honest, that his only concern is that Ukraine might eventually join NATO? That seems like a part of it.
No, John, but that's so easy, right? So if I'm doing the negotiations, I say, all right, you know, I get it. I demand this, this, and this in return. And Ukraine gets to have missiles. They've got to be able to defend themselves and have sovereignty. And you're not to cross 1 inch of that border, etc. But fine, Ukraine's not in NATO, okay? And then if he goes in anyway, then what have I done? I've gathered all of my allies and maybe even China to my side, because I gave him what he wanted and he still went in. Now everyone knows he's the guilty party. But right now, China, India, many other countries are going, well, I don't know. He says he doesn't want Ukraine in NATO. We get it, right?
I get what you're saying. I think they're being disingenuous. I think that's like, so
I don't think so.
Ukraine was not on the precipice of joining NATO anyway. Like it was.
No, John, look, we're being disingenuous. And by the way, both can be true. No, but seriously, guys, look, you know what happened in the Cuban Missile Crisis. They wanted Cuba as part of the military alliance, went to go put missiles in Cuba, and we nearly lit the whole planet on fire. And when I say we, it was us, Americans, that said, if you're anywhere near our border, we will destroy the entire planet, okay? Now, Russia says the same exact thing. Ukraine couldn't be more on my border. They're so on my border, I took a part of their country, okay? So I don't want your military alliance and your missiles on my border.
Yeah, but I'm saying, how was 4 months ago the threat of Ukraine joining NATO any worse than it was 6 months ago or 2 years ago?
Look, John, it doesn't matter what the domestic political concerns of Putin are that drove him to act now as opposed to 4 months ago.
You're saying it would have happened inevitably at some point?
Yes, it's and guys, I'm not saying that. First of all, I would never say that Putin means anything well, right? For anyone who's a sucker and thinks, oh no, American leaders are terrible, but Putin, he can be trusted. You're an idiot if you think that. You'd be the first one in his gulag, okay? So I don't trust Putin 1%. But that's not how diplomacy works. And as you know, we don't get to negotiate with our friends. We have to negotiate with our enemies and people who are opposed to us. And Putin doesn't have to be an enemy, but we've gone down that path. Both sides have gone down that path. So in negotiation, you don't have to trust anyone. You just you lay out your positions, and then if they go X, you do Y. If they do Z, you do A, right? So you don't just go, oh golly gee, I'm not going to give in anything because I'm tougher than you.
Oh, I'm not
that
saying
will definitely
not to
lead
do
to war, right?
I'm with you on doing exactly what you said. I just question whether that would actually change the outcome.
And the other thing is, it's not Neville Chamberlain to do diplomacy and say, fine, I'll give you something that isn't land, right? That isn't territory, that isn't, etc. It is to say, fine, take that part of Ukraine, take the other part of Ukraine. I'm never going to do anything about it. So take as much as you like. We know what that leads to, and that leads to worldwide disaster. So, and guys, look, we sometimes tell you things very seriously. Sometimes we mix in a little bit of lighthearted stuff. Yesterday I was joking about how far the desks were apart in that room that Putin was in. But you have to understand something. This is super dangerous. So we can't control Putin, but we can control ourselves. Part of the reason we're having this conversation is because I want to impress upon us that we should do as much as we can without like concessions that will be counterproductive. If you give territorial concessions, you're not helping to go towards peace. It almost every time an authoritarian leader will take that as an invitation to take more territory and cause more conflict, more violence, and more war. But if you give concessions in diplomacy, that's exactly what diplomacy is. So we, as Americans, should do everything we can to avoid this war. Why? Other than the World War III possibility, which by the way, do you want to take a 1% chance with it? A 2%, 5% chance that we all die? That's insane, okay? But on top of that, if he really starts to grab more territory and then we get into a mess over there, a military mess, China is going to move on Taiwan, almost definitely. Okay, once China moves on Taiwan, what's India going to do? What's Pakistan going to do?
Well, I think at that point we should start gobbling up some stuff. I mean,
no, but by the way, our right-wing idiots are saying, yeah, let's go invade Canada.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah, or at least some of the cooler cities.
Yeah,
the ones with like nice cafes and board game spots.
Yeah, but guys, and we have violence in the streets here. That's our next story about Portland. If we get into some real military conflict with Russia, we're now on the very precipice of it. If we get into some real, this whole world's going to devolve. You know, I talked for many years on the show about the great unraveling, and it hasn't happened yet, right? But all of the signs were pointing towards the unraveling, and we're one string being pulled away from that beginning now.
Well, look, bear in mind as I launch into sort of my prediction that I was wrong. I didn't think we'd even get to this point because again, not that I didn't feel like Putin or anyone wasn't interested in some sort of conflict. I just felt like he could get a lot of what he wants without actually sending troops in. A lot of the domestic benefit that he wants, possible concessions, those sorts of things. In this case, I understand that like people have been saying throughout this entire thing that Biden is war, he wants blood. Like I just don't see it. I think he definitely wants to send hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars potentially in the long run into this situation, certainly billions of dollars. But Biden has been so clear from the very beginning. If anything has been clear, I'm never sending any troops in there. There's always sort of a vague consequences coming that might potentially go beyond sanctions, but he has repeatedly said that. And even in the responses coming today, he talks about how they're relocating troops that were already positioned in Europe to NATO's eastern flank in the Baltic states, but not even implying that they could ever cross the line that he set out earlier. So again, it's not to say that those threads could not be pulled, but I do think that Biden, for all of his other faults, including his faults specific to this situation, really does seem to be sending as many signals as possible that this should never come to actual shooting between their sides.
Yeah, well, fine, I'll take that, but why won't he concede on the simple point of NATO?
Maybe he will now.
Right. And by the way, this is the wrong time to concede that because then you look weak. He should have done it earlier when they're knee deep in negotiations. He's just a terrible leader, honestly. But anyway, our top Eastern European expert has weighed in. One of our smartest viewers, Anna Kasparian, back from the Munich conference.
Is she in the chat?
Yeah, well, the chat is powerful.
That is true.
No, seriously, she reminded me that in 2008, NATO held a conference where they announced a resolution to allow Georgia and Ukraine to join. So that was a resolution they did back in 2008. By the way, Russia then took aggressive action against Georgia. So it's not to say that Russian action was correct, but it is to say that we are actively provoking them over and over again. And
sure, again, I'm just saying there doesn't appear to have been anything specific about this period in regard to Ukraine and NATO. That's all. Not to say that there's nothing that's influencing it. Obviously, there are things that were, and I totally buy what you're saying that you could still diffuse it eventually becoming an issue. I just feel like it is a convenient thing for Putin to pinpoint as the reason that he has to act now, when other potential reasons might be more plausible.
So, okay, last couple of things here. So look, why are we acting now, okay? Well, we really didn't want the Germans to do that second pipeline to Russia, okay? And Germany just announced they're not doing the second pipeline to Russia. Okay, so in a sense, you could say for the oil companies in America and for the fossil fuel companies, that's a massive mission accomplished.
Are you implying that our foreign policy goals are being dictated by the oil companies?
Now think about that, right? So every single person that knows anything about history and politics knows that has historically been the case. That companies run America, and if a banana company wants to get rid of a government, they just literally will kill, our government will kill their leader for a freaking banana company. You think that's in the past? What did we do to Iraq? What did we do to Iraq? Why? Because they had something to do with Al Qaeda. We all know they didn't have anything to do with Al Qaeda. And what happened? All of the worst industries in the world, the oil companies, the defense contractors, and the bankers all made literally trillions of dollars from that war. And if any idiot thinks that the worst people on earth don't care about making trillions of dollars, they're just nuts. So all of a sudden we're providing a ton of natural gas, oil, etc., to Germany and to the rest of Europe. So could that have something to do with it? Yes. Could Biden's domestic problems have something to do with it? So he wants to look tough.
That was all the stuff that I was alluding to earlier. There are plenty of things to criticize him on in this area.
Yeah, I would say almost everything, other than hey, we're not going to send.
Let's do it. Come on, I'm going to shoot you. Like he's just not doing that. Like we can criticize what he's actually doing without pretending that he's doing something he's not.
And the last piece of criticism for Biden is that besides all of these influences on him that are very relevant to him, he's just an old school Republican. That's all he is. He's always been a Republican, even when I almost literally said, even when he was a Democrat, right? He's been pretending to be a Democrat his whole life, but he's always supported Republican positions. We just did a story earlier in the show where he says, even if it means it costs us the elections in 2022, he will not criticize Mitch McConnell. He says that's one of his best friends and he won't do it. Mitch McConnell, meanwhile, is in the middle of ripping half of his face off, of Biden's face off. So Biden is a neoconservative. He voted for the Iraq war. He's voted for every war. So his philosophy is, well, we have to show the world how we can invade them and how tough we are. And we're America. We will invade you, right? So none of that means that Putin's not at fault. They're both at fault. I know that in America and probably all across the world, everything's binary. You have to pick one side or the other, and you have to be 100% on one side and 0% on the other side. No, they're both idiots and monsters, and they're leading all of us into the worst, potentially most disastrous war. And I hope to God it doesn't happen. But and now I'll end on blaming Putin. Dude, you're nuts and you're playing with fire. You think you're a tough guy? He's obsessed with being a tough guy.
They all are.
Yeah, you remember that dumb video he did? That's why Russian media attacks me all the time. Yes, they watch this, and yes, they hate it when I criticize their beloved daddy, Putin. Okay, that loser went and played hockey with the national hockey team,
that was
Russian
so
national
rough.
hockey team. And he's like an old grandpa, and he's going around like 3 miles per hour, and they're like, and they let him score 5 goals. And pathetic Russian media were like, oh, dear brave leader, Vladimir Putin scores 5 goals, amazing. The North Koreans are like, why didn't we think of that, right? And so this guy, because of his apparently issues with his manhood, right? It's like, I will show you, I will take parts of Ukraine and I will invade different countries. I will show you how tough I am. I will murder people in UK and all across the world. I am old school tough guy. Okay, yeah, until you burn the whole place down, right? So these kind of toxic guys are what has led to endless wars, and not them getting killed, but all of us getting killed.
Yeah.
So they're both definitely at fault. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.